Absolutely. And I think obviously economic factors are enormous, as we've discussed, but there's also the values, having this far left identity politics shoved down their throat, shoved down their kids' throat, just dominating the culture. That's again something else that the Democrats seem to be blind about, how that's perceived by so many just regular folk. Now, switching tack, you wrote a really powerful piece. I encourage everyone to read it. It was for Spiked. And you were highlighting there that it's not just the working class that are being left behind by the left, but also women who were kidnapped, raped, murdered by Hamas. It was a important piece. Why is that? Why? How can they justify abandoning women who were treated so appallingly, and so much of it was captured on video? We don't even have to imagine what happened to these women. We know.
And it's still happening, unfortunately, to some of the women being held hostage in Gaza by Hamas. Rita, thank you so much for highlighting this, and for highlighting my piece. It means a lot to me. People really don't want to talk about this. It's really difficult to talk about it. There are sort of two main reasons, I think, that it's become so easy for the left to ignore the plight of these women. The first is, and I'm sure you're seeing this as well in your country, I think feminists have gotten used to being asked to defend rapists, for example, transgender rapists who then demand to be put in a woman's prison, or become regulated to being asked to defend a young man who decides he's a young woman and then demands to play on a women's wrestling team, right? Like the transgender agenda has made feminists get habituated to defending the abuse of women. And so there's almost this natural, they've started to have to question themselves when they're asked to defend women, right? Aren't we supposed to be defending the other side? And the other thing that I think is at play here is, the woke ideology really is a binary. It says we don't distinguish anymore between right versus wrong. We are not allowed to do that. Who are we as white people or as oppressors to say what is right and what is wrong? No, there's only powerful versus powerless. And whoever we decide has less power, they are inherently virtuous. Their powerlessness is virtue. They've lost the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. They see powerlessness as virtue, and they ascribe powerlessness to anyone with darker skin color. So, for example, any person of color has inherent virtue because they are inherently powerless, and any white person is inherently evil because they are seen as powerful.
But Batya, there is a clause there, though. There is an exception, and that is if they're conservative, if the person of colour, whether they're black, brown, is conservative, then all those oppression points are at the window. And I can tell you that personally. Just before you go, you were perhaps woke once, or at the very least left-leaning, left-wing. Can you just tell me quickly what led to your political awakening? What red-pilled you, as the kids say?
I'll tell you the first moment it happened. It wasn't like all at once. It was sort of slowly and then all at once. But the first moment that I had an inkling that there was something wrong with my worldview was when I encountered a 2018 Yale study that found that there was a difference between how white liberals and white conservatives talk to people of color. And this was the difference. When a white liberal encounters a black person or a Hispanic person, they dumb down their vocabulary, and white conservatives don't do this. And I remember thinking to myself, and we call them the racists. I mean, it's so racist, but I, of course, immediately recognized myself and everyone I knew, because that is wokeness in a nutshell. That was what it meant to be on the left. And that was the beginning of my unwokening, as I say.
It's a good beginning. You're right. The bigotry of low expectations, it's very strong among the left, and they're often completely blind to it. But yeah, thank you so much for your time this evening. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Rita.